Hello, my name is Madeline Martin, and I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. And I'm going to be interviewing my mom on what it was like growing up in Sweden. Mom, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Jenny Cox, and I was born and raised in Sweden. And my family and I moved to Austin, Texas in 1985 when I was 10 years old.
What was it like when moving from Sweden to America?
Well, my mom had taken my brother and I to visit the US before we moved because she is American and she had taken us to meet our grandparents where she was from in California. And she had taken us to Disneyland. And I remember that experience vividly. I had never experienced anything like Disneyland before. So um, I expected moving to the US would be like Disneyland. And then, of course, it wasn't.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that about your story of moving here. What did you notice here in America that was strange to you?
Well, growing up in Sweden, when during meal times, you always had milk with your meals. Even actually, the adults drank milk with their meals, and that is something that's different, of course, to U.S. culture. And when we moved here, I found it strange that people drank soda or a Coke with their lunch or with their meal, and I had never seen that before. That seemed really strange to me because in Sweden I had Coke before, but I can remember my dad bringing home a liter of Coke for me and my brother and him to taste or to have on a hot summer day, and it was obviously a poignant enough experience for me to remember this many years later. You know, when Dad brought home the liter of Coke and we got to enjoy soda, so that was not the norm and something I found unusual with American dinner or meal culture.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that one, especially being raised by you. We never really had soda. It was always milk for dinner. So whenever I visited my friend's house for like a sleepover or something, have when they got to have juice or soda, it was very different. And I was just like, whoa, that's really different. So, anyways, um, what did you like most about moving here to Texas?
Well, it was a bit of a culture shock moving here. I can remember first when we first got here that the I think that they hadn't figured out how to turn on the AC or the electricity. I mean, I was only 10, so I don't remember the details, but I remember it was very hot in the house and I was experiencing culture shock. I had never, Sweden's a very cool or cold country, and Texas is very warm or hot. So it was very hot. And I remember thinking, well, what can I do? What can I do to escape this heat? I'll go into the garage because the garage is always freezing cold. Well, it would be in Sweden, right? Well, I walked into the garage and it was like a sauna. I thought, oh my God, there's no
Wow.
getting away from this. But yes, that was kind of, but at the same time, the warmth also provided opportunities to go to the lake and go to the ocean, something that, you couldn't really do uh, um, in warmth anyway, like you do in Texas. And that was fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, I never really thought about how in Sweden you guys don't really get to go swimming a lot because it's so freezing out there. So that is definitely something that's very interesting. Uh, so my next question is I visited Sweden a while ago and I definitely noticed there was some very strange things that you guys did over there compared to over here. One being you guys celebrate summer solstice. I took a video of this celebration, so let me show it really quickly. All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3. Åh! Där satt den! Bra! Ja!
Okay, so after watching that video, I noticed that you guys hoist up a large pole. Could you tell me a little bit about this celebration, what it's called, and why you guys celebrate it?
Summer solstice in Sweden is known as midsummer, and it is comes from pagan times when folks would celebrate and try to ensure that they have a good harvest in the fall. And so they would, it was sort of a way to connect to the gods and make sure that they were making the spring season fertile. And so the maypole is a phallic symbol that's decorated in foliage and flowers to symbolize fertility. And it is raised to in a ceremony to sort of fertilize and bless the spring planting and sort of usher in a bountiful harvest in the fall.
Wow, I did not know that about that. Um, Also, another thing, I took a picture of these people dressed up in these kind of like folk costumes. Here, let me show them really quickly.
1, 2,
Alright.
1, 2, 3.
Hold on one second. Here we go. So, could you tell me a little bit about what they're wearing and why?
So whereas history in the U.S. goes back a couple hundred to 300 years, in Sweden and elsewhere in Europe, the history can go back 1,000 years. And so, of course, today people don't wear these types of costumes, but in the past, people did weave their own yarn and spun their own cotton. So these traditional folk costumes are made out of cotton and wool, and they're specific to the regions where the people are from. So there's different parts, different regions in Sweden, and depending upon what region you were from, your costume would reflect that. So I can't tell you where these people are from, but that's the history of folk costumes.
Wow, that's really interesting. During this festival you call Midsummer, what is like a traditional meal that you would eat? And could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I think one of the most traditional meals that people have familiar with, have heard of, are Swedish meatballs. So Swedish meatballs are kind of like an Italian meatball, but a lot smaller. They're bite size, and they are eaten with brown gravy and boiled potatoes and lingonberry sauce, which is tastes very similar in look and taste and consistency to cranberry sauce. So that's a very traditional meal. There's also a lot of fish and, like I said, boiled potatoes in Swedish cuisine.
Oh, wow, that is very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing everything you know about the Swedish norms and what it was like moving to America. You did inform me a lot about the Swedish culture that I didn't know before. I can't wait to visit Sweden again, knowing the knowledge I do now. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye. Okay.